Okay, hi everyone. My name is Lauren. I am the Senior Manager of Marketing and Community for Power to Fly, and I am so excited to be here for our Data Hour this month. So if you've never attended a Chat and Learn before, or a Data Hour for that matter, this is a really unique opportunity, and today especially. Traditionally, when we do these chat and learns, as you can see, you had to register for the chat and submit a question to our speaker. So usually we'll go through those questions, and we'll do that again today if we need to. But really the purpose of today's call is to get your data questions answered. So anything from, something that you might be stuck on, to a question about a visualization or coding or syntax, or whatever that may be, data related. This is an opportunity to ask an expert, and I'll let her fill in her background in just a moment, but really anything that you are interested in learning about. And today we don't even have to just focus on the data. Like I said, we can go through some of your basic questions, and we will go through the submitted question or pre-submitted questions as well. But before we do get started, like I said, we'll go through a couple quick housekeeping items, and that is this is meant to be interactive. So use this opportunity to virtually network with Barb, with the other attendees on this call, and essentially anyone who might be listening to this recording afterwards. Which brings me to my second point, that this is being recorded. So like Barb just said, there are a lot of people who could not attend today, and hello if you're tuning into the recording, so happy to have you. But I want everyone to kind of, on the call, pay attention, focus, engage live, and then you can always rewatch and kind of pick up as we go along in the recording if you have follow-up questions or what have you. But without further ado, I am so excited to welcome Barb back to the Chat and Learn stage. She's been here many times before. She's hosted a number of different chats and different things. We've covered so many data questions. I'm feeling like I'm starting to get the terminology down, so that's a good thing. But Barb, I would love for you just to tell everyone on the call a little bit more about you, your background, and what makes you kind of the expert here today.
Sure. So yes, I'm Barb. I'm in Philadelphia, and I run a consulting firm called Boxplot Analytics. So I have a bachelor's in statistics. So I've always kind of been a math person and done a lot of math related things my whole life. And then after that, I worked at an insurance company where I was a pure data analyst. So typically it would be like the marketing department or HR, somebody would have a data question and they would send it to us, and we would crunch the numbers and go back and give them the response. I still do that for clients, but in between that, I worked for a statistician directly, PhD from Harvard, taught at Harvard, and then was an expert in the field for so many years and did consulting. He started to begin to look into retirement though, so I was like, oh no, I still want to do this, but he's retiring, so that's when I kind of branched out and started doing it on my own through Boxplot. Like I mentioned, I am in Philadelphia. I love Philadelphia. Today is Gritty's birthday. If you're all not familiar, Gritty is the mascot of the Philadelphia Flyers, which I hate sports, but I'm okay with Gritty. All of us Philadelphians have come around to him. And I do love being a Philadelphian. And then finally, yes, I'm proficient in a bunch of the things you see at the bottom of the screen there: Excel, Tableau, Click, Python, R, JavaScript, SQL. So if any of you have questions about any of that, is totally fine. And like Lauren said, I hope it'll be interactive. You can feel free to come on camera and come off mute and interrupt at any time.
Yay. And like I said, yeah, come off mute, come on camera, ask your questions, send your files or whatever we need to dive into. We're happy to do that now. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to send those questions over. And if not, we will start answering these questions. So these were the questions that were pre-submitted by our audience attendees, and a lot of different stuff here. So I'm happy to kind of start here, and if this sparks some more interest or additional questions, I will be monitoring the chat as well as watching to see if you guys pop off mute, and then I'll be sure to give you the floor. But I don't see any questions in here yet, so let's tackle this first one. And this question has definitely been asked in, I think, every single one of our data chats. And I feel like we could talk about tools forever. But you definitely have your favorites, and I would love for you to kind of explain what each of these tools are and what is the best tool for a beginner.
You know, I will say this is the vaguest form of the question I think I've seen of the previous times this question has been asked. So I assume this person means just for like general data analysis, like as a data analyst, not for data science or anything more intense than that. Excel does work for most basic applications that people need to fulfill, and there's a couple add-ons to Excel once you get there. But as I've mentioned in previous versions of this, you will eventually hit a wall with Excel. So either it's going to be a physical limitation, like Excel only allows 1,048,000 some rows, and then it says, nope, I just won't even open the file. And then it might be a graphical thing, like Excel doesn't plot geographic data, maps, well at all. You have to, I'm sure there's some kind of add-on, but I don't use the add-ons. When it gets to mapping, I go to a different program like Tableau or Python or ArcGIS or something else. So for the majority of analyses, for smaller data sets, Excel would be what I would start out with if you were like truly just completely starting with data analysis.
Great. Good to know.
I don't know if it was someone here that asked the question and a follow-up that's more specific, but I hope that answers it.
I definitely that answers it, but would be very curious, where this person is as far as beginner. Like you said, how much experience do you have? What's your resources look like? So again, feel free to chime in and engage. Our next question here is, I'm really interested in interactive dashboards, but my job will not pay for Tableau. What is the next best software you'd recommend for dashboards?
Yeah, and I'm going to try to pull up an example while I'm answering this. So you can do, I guess it depends on what this person means by interactive. And again, if it's someone who's here, please, by all means, speak up. But if you mean just a dashboard that's changing or even pulling data in from another source, you can do that in Excel. There are options in Excel, and I have an example of one that I'll pull up. But the other, Tableau is not the only option for doing interactive dashboards. I will say Tableau is probably better. It's a little bit easier to do what you want to do with pulling in data and making the dashboard more animated, more interactive, more dynamic, but Excel will do it. And then also Python or R, any programming language will do all of those things. Now, I will say the programming languages are significantly harder to get up and going and learn. Like, it's not going to be something you're going to pick up in a month or two. All programming languages are very difficult. It will be much easier to make the dashboard in Excel or Tableau. So that's probably where I would start, is Excel if they absolutely won't pay for Tableau. Or if you want to try to learn Python, it's a worthwhile investment. It's not going to be fast.
Thank you so much for that answer. It was actually me. My name is Anne. I asked that question, and yeah, basically what you mentioned was exactly what I wanted to do with it. I just wanted to have a dashboard where, like you said, it was interactive and it was pulling from different data sources. That way, if I had a question like, how is this doing? Or what do we know about this analysis, that I wasn't having to, pull together different static analyses at any point in time. So I do have a background in R, but primarily for statistical analysis. So with that, I could probably, the learning curve would still be hard, but not quite as hard because I'm not an R newbie. But yeah, knowing that I don't have access to Tableau, and like you said, Excel can be a little limiting, especially if I want to do math data. So would you then say use Excel for what you can, but then after that maybe move into R for stuff that's a little trickier?
Yes, okay. Exactly. And let me share my screen here. Glad that you're, Lauren, is it okay if I show you that? I'm glad you spoke up, and perfect. Yeah, so this is an example of one level of interactivity in Excel where you have the slicer. Are you familiar with this by any chance?
No, I'm not actually.
Okay, it's just filtering on the go. So now I'm looking at all the data in the south, and then I can click north and the whole thing. Okay. Yeah, so this is an option for Excel. And then like you were saying, right, Tableau does all this. I know your job won't pay for it. Understandable. Tableau is very expensive.
Yeah.
Very expensive. So this is one level of interactivity. And then the other level, which you can do both at once, is pull data in dynamically from some exterior source. So in the data tab, and I'm on a Mac, so there's less options. Microsoft does that on purpose. But you could pull it, here I have from HTML, from text, I could do a database query, and then that's the other level, and then you hit the refresh button and it'll update. So yeah, those are doable in Excel, and you can get a lot done. But then yes, once you hit the wall of Excel, whether it's the data limitations or it's some chart that you want to do and you can't, then yes, I would go to R. But especially if you have the background in R, like you said, that's great. If you know it, you can definitely do it. I would look into Shiny. Have you heard of
Okay. No, I haven't used Shiny. Most of my visualizations have been primarily in ggplot, but but I will look at that. Thank you so much. That makes sense.
Yeah, great question.
Can you show Shiny, Barb?
I don't have it on. I haven't used it, but I have friends that rave about Shiny. I use Python mostly for my visualizations and deployment, so I can show R, but no, I don't have. I haven't done a Shiny project.
No worries. Figured we'd get as much
visual.
Yeah,
I would otherwise, yeah.
No, that's a really cool. I've actually never seen that. What is that? It's a slicer from Excel. I've never seen that.
That's right. Yes, the slicer tool that lets you kind of filter on the go.
Really cool.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me go over here. And then again, like I said, anyone on the call, if you have follow-up questions, feel free to type them in, come off mute. Super, super interesting. So the next question is, do you have any advice for translating for non-data teams?
Yeah, I think I understand this question, even though it also was written a little bit vaguely, but this was my biggest struggle as a data analyst at the insurance company that I worked for. Because like I said, we were serving usually the marketing department or HR, people who do not have any data background at all. And that's fine, that's just not what they do. They have other functions of the business that are just as important, just not data. So it is a struggle to sometimes explain the visualizations. Like I would be writing emails and creating reports, and we'd be having meetings with the marketing team, and I'm sitting here thinking like, this is so clear, I'm like conveying everything really clearly, and my boss would come back over and over like, they don't understand what you're saying, they have no clue what's happening, like they can't follow that. So I feel the pain for this question. And yeah, it is, it's something I think that's kind of a little bit acquired and something you unfortunately have to get used to. But then also, obviously making simpler charts is helpful. Like I love scatter plots. I think that there's tons of uses for scatter plots. They are really handy, but people have a lot of difficulty interpreting scatter plots. They're just a tougher chart for people to understand. So I'm not saying avoid them, but maybe work up to that, with the non-data team, or start with something simpler. Definitely don't do like things like double y-axes. That will really confuse people if you're trying to show them a chart and explain it. And I would stick with charts as opposed to tables of numbers. That's something I see a lot is people will do PowerPoints and put in a screenshot of a table or just copy and paste the table. And the human brain doesn't interpret numbers in that way as well as it would, as opposed to like a visualization. Like the visualization is important. It's not just to make it look pretty. It's also for helping to understand and interpret. So I think clear, simple visualizations are like a big key for translating to non-data teams, and then maybe starting out with the ones that most people at least might have seen before once or twice, like the bar, the pie, maybe even a tree map. Most people don't have too much trouble with those, and then moving up to the harder ones. I hope that answered the question. Again, vague. If anybody has a follow-up.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually I talked with another, I don't remember if it was a data scientist or data analyst, but someone who had asked a question very similar to this last week. I thought it was really interesting. They said that, whenever they present their data to non-technical teams, they always show the full graphs or the visualizations, and then they pull out like 3 main things that people could look at. So they're always showing all the data and then really like guiding the people to the main points with text, or else people get very lost. And I thought that was a really good good tip, because I always do the same thing. I show everyone everything. It's like, here's this whole deck of data, like try and absorb as much as you can.
Arrows too, little arrows pointing at what you want people to look at, or boxes around certain points that are of interest. Yeah, you're trying to tell a story, right? It's all about data storytelling, and
yeah, exactly.
Thing in itself. Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you're not to keep your own, like you should be keeping all of the data, but it's what you show, like you said, tell the correct story. That's so important. All right, our next question here is, I'm not working on a particular question right now, but worked on a usability project where I had to determine if the data I gathered was statistically significant. What is the best way to do this?
Yeah, so I dug up one of my previous examples that I used to explain hypothesis testing to people. I'm going to go on that track unless, if this person is here, you tell me that this is not what you were going for. So usually some kind of hypothesis test will test for statistical significance. There's a lot of them. There's difference of means, difference of proportions, and one sample test. Like there's a whole bunch of them. The most basic, or what I think is one of the easier ones to comprehend, and Lauren, if it's okay if I once again share my screen, is just comparing an average that you get to a number. So once again, in Philadelphia, if you haven't gotten the point already. So Tasty Cake is a Philadelphia company. And in this fake example, and I'm sure they're gonna sue me one day, but Tasty Cake believes that their pies are being overfilled. Like the machines are broken and the pies are supposed to weigh about 8 ounces each, but they took an average and the average comes out to greater than 8 ounces. But how do you know if that, like this person is asking, is statistically significant? Like if I get 8.1 ounces as my average, is that really far enough from 8 for me to be like, oh, okay, there's a difference, or not really? And I won't go through the whole thing in detail for the sake of time on the call, but there's a whole series of steps that you have to go through to test for statistical significance. I will send this to you guys. I've been meaning to make this into a blog post on Boxplot's website, so I might try to quickly get that up first and then just send you the link instead of sending everybody a PDF. So it might take me a day or two, but the steps generally involve you collect the data, and I assume this person might already have it, and the sample size does matter. Now, this person mentioned sample size in their question. That's kind of a whole separate thing of like, how much do you need in your sample size to achieve a particular goal? That's a totally separate calculation. There's a great cheat sheet though, if you Google statistics, you know, the For Dummies book series. I know it's got an offensive name, but Statistics for Dummies cheat sheet. The cheat sheet is very good. And it actually has that exact calculation on it of what is the sample size, you know, statistically figuring sample size. What sample size do I need if I want to be this confident in my answer and have these other parameters? So if you were asking that, that's the answer to that. And there's other formulas for this too. This is just one of them. But then once you figure all that out, you have to go through the process, you collect your sample. So in this case, we're collecting fake pies off the assembly line, and it's gotta be random and unbiased and all the whole, you know, 9 yards. You can't choose them yourself. That's not a fair test. And then you have to pick the right hypothesis test. Like I said, there's several, there's not just one. You have to choose a confidence level. And if you're testing most things, it's 95%. That's like the standard for everything. If you're testing something where lives are on the line, like airplane parts, now you want 99.99, right? You want like much more confidence. But for pies, we're okay with 95, the standard. And then you state your null and alternative hypothesis. And this is not required as part of the calculation, but usually it's something that you do when you're showing people what you did. So the null, or what you know, kind of like the baseline, is that the pies should average out to 8 ounces. And again, it's not exactly 8 ounces. It's statistically close enough to 8. Or the alternative here is what we think is happening. The hypothesis is that the pies are more than 8 ounces. And that's what we're trying to show, one or the other. You have to meet certain assumptions for the test, and that goes back to the sample size and whatnot, and you can kind of review that. And then you calculate a z-score, and then look up the z-score, and this gives you your result. And in this case, I think I had the pies weighing 8.17 ounces, and the sample size was 100. And it turned out that this was not far enough. 8.17 is not far away enough from 8 ounces at the 95% confidence level to say that the machines are broken. So even though it didn't come out to 8, or what some people might even think is close to 8, it's not far enough for us to conclude that it's statistically significantly different. So it's a lengthier process, and that's one of the easier ones. When you get like A/B testing in marketing is another example of a different hypothesis test. So they're really handy, but it is a lot to think about, and there's like a lot of little gotchas. Like if you have, if you know your standard deviation, it's one calculation and formula. If you don't, it's another. They're involved. Did that answer? I hope if the person is here, answer the question.
I think that was a great answer. I'm glad that you related it back to pies. That's always super effective. But did you say that there was some place that people could go and find those standard deviations? I just want to reiterate that again.
Yeah, well, the standard deviation would be from your sample, but yeah, I'll send out the cheat sheet and that example. That the cheat sheet will have all the numbers that are needed, and right, I'm sorry, the standard. You do need the one number for the formula. Yeah, that is in the cheat sheet. I'll send it out.
Awesome, great. So our next question here is, I'm a qualitative researcher and analyst looking to develop qualitative skills. Where would you recommend I begin?
I'm assuming they meant quantitative for.
I was gonna say that too. Two qualitatives.
This question is very high level, so I'm assuming they're asking for recommendations, and I guess, from any background, whether it's a qualitative researcher or not, I'd probably start with some sort of class. I don't know if just looking at books would be enough to really dive in. Everyone is different. Like I've met people who, have totally unrelated bachelor's degrees and work in a particular function and pick it up on the job and get really, really good at it and are pretty great analysts. And then other people, and then maybe it also depends on like your work environment and your level of training that you get from your workplace. They need some kind of course or something else. I usually don't recommend that people go back for like a whole master's degree or anything like that, only because I have read a lot of articles recently that question the value and output of masters. I mean, it's a worthwhile endeavor if you want to do that and, love learning and whatnot. But in terms of like, additional money earned as opposed to people who don't have the master's degrees. And that might be a phenomenon right now just because there's a shortage of data analysts or qualified data analysts nationwide. So people aren't as honed in on, do you have a master's or not? And that might change. But yeah, I'd probably pick some other type of course, even the community college courses or something like that, just to kind of get a handle on the basics. And then like maybe even more targeted Excel or, and disclaimer, I teach some of those courses. That's why I'm like avoiding names, but that they can be helpful. And there is a good book too, the AP Statistics Study Guide for high school students. So it's written for high school students. So it's very easy to understand, but it's very comprehensive. It would cover all the concepts that you'd cover in a typical intro college level course, but it's not a textbook. It's like Barron's, Kaplan, these companies that put out study guides. I will also make a note to myself to add that to the email. But I hope that answers what I'm sorry, the question did come in, didn't it?
Yeah, somewhat related, but what advice do you have for someone who wants to get into a career in data? Is there a specific path you recommend?
Yeah.
So this person probably does not have the traditional background in data.
It is a tough one. So again, it's just kind of what I've experienced is the best I can answer. Because I did it, with the bachelor, so I can't speak for my own. Like I'm saying, if you don't want to go back and get bachelor's, which I'm not saying you probably shouldn't, just anybody I'm not recommending, is expensive, right? Like usually you don't want to go that route if you already have a bachelor's in something else or whatever. So the only other path that I can think of is, I personally would want some kind of course if I was embarking on a new career path. And there are companies out there that offer courses. Like again, I've done work for several of them, like General Assembly is one of them. DataCamp has had issues recently with sexual harassment claims. I'm not, encouraging anything or saying anything about that part of it. Just they are another company that does that. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. And then what's another one? Udacity. Udacity is another good one. So yeah, there's programs out there. I would probably start with that. And then after that, I would look for projects that I could latch on to that would show a potential employer or somebody else that I know what I'm doing. I'm active with Code for Philly, which is a Code for America brigade. It's a volunteer group where anybody can go and say, I have a project that I want to do that benefits the city of Philadelphia, or sometimes the city of Philadelphia will say we need help with XYZ. And they pull in people from all different disciplines to work on these projects. It's not just programmers or coders. They need data analysts. They need people to do Excel work, Tableau work, whatever is needed. graphic artists, even, even non-data stuff. And it's a great way to get free experience in one of these fields without having to go through like an employment process, right? And going through like interviews and whatnot. You can have this real world experience, put it on a resume, talk about it in an interview. You're not going to get paid, but at least you've got something that you can actually start working on, plus the coursework or the boot camp or whatever it is to show on your resume. That would be my best. I can't think of any other way of doing it other than trying to learn on the job through somebody who hires you. But I think that's right. The difficulty is, how are you going to get hired if you don't have the experience? So.
And actually, that's a question that we have coming up, so we'll kind of skip ahead to it. I know you hit on like the boot camp piece here, but what about, and are there any Moocs that you know of or can recommend?
Yeah, I said this in the previous data hours. I always kind of caution people about content that's put out that's not reviewed. So the ones that I mentioned, General Assembly, Data Camp, and Udacity, they all have teams of people like reviewing the content before it goes out. It's not just like one person, random person pushing out content. So and I'm going to say, I don't know how they pronounce it, Udemy or Udemy, they, I think, are that style of anyone can just post anything. So not to be confused with Udacity. They are two different things. So Udacity,
name.
I know, they try to be confusing, I'm sure. Udacity vets their stuff before it goes out. Like, it's a team of people developing quality videos and content, whereas Udemy and some of these other ones out there, it's just anybody can kind of go on and post anything, which is not always high quality or relevant. So I would be hesitant to pick one of those. There might be some good ones out there, but that would be my hesitation.
And I know there's something, or we talked about this in one of the other previous data hours, but where people can find big data sets for free or to practice with. I know you mentioned, volunteering for that local chapter, but where else can people find big data sets?
Yes, I have a list of free data sets as a blog post, so I will send that out as well. But the number one source is Kaggle, Kaggle. They have a ton. They're constantly getting more, and they're very quality free data sets. They don't give you prompts, so you're kind of on your own there. But yeah, the data's there.
Yeah, that's great, because I know we've had some questions before about people who are working on super proprietary data work, and they can't necessarily share this stuff in portfolios, so it makes it really tricky when they're interviewing to kind of show what they've been working on. So a lot of times people use the free data sets to get what they're doing. So that's really, really helpful.
Okay.
Let's pop back to this question. So I'm exploring, let me get this on my screen. I'm exploring predictive employee lifetime value and curious if you're aware of anyone doing work in this area.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I assume they mean like trying to predict how much revenue or value an employee will bring in over the time that employee is with the company. And I noticed there was another HR question that came in. Yeah, I was really excited. So one of my clients right now is an HR company. They're called Employee Cycle, and super relevant to the other question. So I'll mention it there. But they might have a particular insight into this question as well. I don't know of anyone else that would be looking into this particular thing, but I'm happy to look at if this person has data or numbers. I mean, you would need the data. So you'd need obviously how long maybe the person has already been there, and some kind of maybe predictor of when they will leave or be terminated or what that, and that's going to be the trickier part, which it's very doable, but you're trying to guess when they're going to leave, and then I guess put together some estimate of how much revenue they've brought in. But if you have the numbers, it's something you could certainly work out. And I would love to see the data behind it, but I don't know of any particular formulas or people working on it otherwise.
Interesting. And yeah, let's get to that other question. So what are the most important HR metrics to track in 2019, 2020?
Yeah, and if I could share one more time, like I said, I am actually doing this. One of my clients is Employee Cycle, and this is exactly what they do. So they are they track HR metrics and the most critical ones, and these are some of the metrics that they consider to be most critical, which I'm not an HR expert specifically, obviously I'm just a data expert, but they are HR experts, and these are the ones that are kind of, and you hear this a lot, like I've done other HR projects, so we're helping them develop the dashboard. This is just kind of a screenshot of the development, not the full thing. But then what we also do is, my company will take the more intense questions that are not in the dashboard. So these are definitely like the base ones. Like this is like everybody should be starting here. And then when you have the other intense questions, we can help with those too. But number of employees, they have a whole bunch on turnover. So turnover is huge in HR. What's your overall turnover rate? What's your projected turnover rate? What was your turnover rate last year? And then, a line plot trending over time. And what about turnover by gender or diversity metrics, ethnicity, all these other ways of measuring turnover, but then also, are you hitting your diversity goals? Are there not enough, a big question I hear all the time, are not enough females in tech positions? And all these metrics can be tracked with a dashboard like this. Brands, all this data is pulled in from APIs. So if you have a Glassdoor account, they pull in your data from Glassdoor. If you have Bamboo, I forget some, Namely, Sapling, all these HR programs, it's all pulled in and then analyzed and put into the dashboard. So I would start with taking a look at their website for the best HR metrics to start tracking, for sure.
That's great. And that's a beautiful dashboard. Did you do that? Is that all you guys?
Yeah, we helped, that's not even the full thing. That's just the preview. But yeah, that's we helped them develop the charts and coded it out. And yeah, it's been an exciting project. I've really enjoyed it.
That's great. Super exciting. I love seeing the diversity metrics on there. So important. So those are actually all of the pre-submitted questions that we have right now. So I would love to kind of open it up to everyone on the call. Are there any additional questions that you have or follow-ups to the questions that Barb, or the answers that Barb gave today? And I guess while we kind of sit and poll the audience, Barb, I would love to just hear maybe a little bit more about what you do at Boxplot and how someone can get involved if they're interested in, a data solution.
Oh, yeah. So we're a pure data analysis consulting firm. So other companies will come to us with a specific data issue. I recently had a call from a shredding company that you ever see those trucks that go around, and they have fleets of trucks, and they wanted to understand their data around their fuel usage and just how the trucks are kind of moving around in logistics. We obviously get HR people with HR questions. And like I was trying to say before, usually for us, it's the more advanced HR questions, because Employee Cycle does a really great job with the dashboard. It's usually like for the larger companies. An example question we got once was, is it more likely that an employee who gets stock options will stay at the company as opposed to an employee who is not part of our stock program? So these, HR can get very niche too with the questions. Marketing is a huge one. We partner with a lot of marketing organizations that have clients with a lot of marketing questions, Facebook Analytics, Google Analytics, which campaigns were successful, et cetera. So all these, people tend to have a lot of questions about their data, and they call and we kind of meet them where they are with whatever platform they're using, Excel, Tableau, Python, whatever. And it's pure consulting in that way of we just kind of create a custom solution to whatever they need.
I love it. And we do have a question in the chat. Can you possibly, Barb, give an example of data in A/B testing?
Yeah. So usually in A/B testing, if anyone else is not familiar, you've got two web pages, A and B, and you have some kind of goal. Like maybe you want people to buy a product, and you're trying to see which version of, it's the same page, but maybe a different design. So A is, I don't know, yellow, more yellow color, and B has more red color. And you're trying to see which one is more likely to get people to buy your product if they land on that page. So you'll direct people as they come to your site to one of the two pages, and you collect data on it. How many people went to that page? How many people purchased from that page? Those are the two critical metrics to track. You get a percentage because it's not going to be the same number of people that visit each page or that purchase from each page. And then it's a hypothesis test to say, is this proportion of people that purchased from page A statistically significant, different from the portion who purchased from page B? And it can get really interesting because usually the numbers are in the hundreds of thousands, right? Like if it's a popular website, your business is getting hundreds of thousands, et cetera, hits per day going to these pages. So the percentages can be really close to each other sometimes, like 18.75% versus like, I don't know, 19.1%. And again, you can't just look at those numbers and say, oh, those are so close. They're essentially the same thing. You have to run the test, and sometimes you'll be surprised that it'll come out, this is statistically significantly different just because the sample was so big, especially with A/B testing. Like I said, if it's so many people hitting the page, when you have such a large sample size, you have to start getting further and further away before it becomes significant because the sample size is so big. So it all depends on all those factors. I have an A/B testing example too that I can send out with the email. And you're all welcome to contact me after this too. I should have mentioned that. I obviously you'll have my email address. I'll send you the email, and you can find me on LinkedIn or whatever you're comfortable with, and I'm happy to answer further questions after the seminar as well. I won't disappear forever after this.
Did you want to show the example, or do you want to just send it after?
Yeah, well, if everyone wants to take a look at it and go through it, I can show it. Yeah, I can dig it up if that's of interest.
We have another question in the chat. Someone says, let's see it. So let's see it. I'll stop sharing.
Oh, okay. Alrighty, sure thing. Let me pull this up.
Our other question is about sorting in R. So this person says, can you talk a little bit more about sorting in R, and what's your method of choice? So we'll get to that one after.
Okay. So here's my A/B. It is a two-proportion hypothesis test A/B testing example. So in this fake example, I have page A, and 100,000 people visit page A, and 20,000 of them purchase something. So that's a proportion or rate of 20%. And then for page B, you have 80,000 people that visit page B, 15,000 purchase, which is a rate of 18.75%. The difference between that 20% and 18.75% is 1.25%. That's what we're trying to test. Is that essentially statistically significantly different from zero, right? Because if they were the same, it would be zero. We're saying is 1.25% far enough from zero in this context to be significant. And that's such a critical thing in statistics. A lot of statistics is wording and the background. Like if I were to change the confidence level here, like maybe I'm no longer 95% confident, I only want to be 50% confident, then it might be significant. Like, so it depends on all these factors of how many people in this case are going to the website, or the sample size, what's your confidence level. Changing any of those things will change the answer. And sometimes, unfortunately, people do that unethically, right? Like people will put in the fine print, oh, my significance level was only like 80%. Well, do we want to be 8% confident or 50% confident about something? We might as well go flip a coin. You know, like what's the point? So yeah, it should be 95%. And that's what we're testing in this case. At 95% confidence, is this different from zero? So this is a difference of proportions test. How do I know? Well, I have two proportions, and I'm trying to see if they're different. And again, this cheat sheet does a really great job of breaking it. They have a lot of ads, unfortunately, but it does a great job of breaking them down. These are all the different, the major hypothesis tests and what you need for each of them, and the sample sizes and assumptions and whatnot. And there's a lot out there. So the null hypothesis in this case is a little bit different from the last one. We're not testing a number. Again, is the difference different from zero? This one has a lot of math involved. The formula for this one is not easy. I would call this one of the harder ones with the formulas, but there are apps out there that will do this for you. You don't have to memorize this formula. I mean, you can obviously always look it up, but if you're not sure, there's so many, I'm sure now, that you can plug these numbers into, and they're probably paid services, but they'll do it for you. But you have to plug it into the formula, and you're getting the pooled, it's called the pooled p-value, and it's kind of like the weighted average of the two, and it's the 0.1944, and then you calculate a z-score, which is saying how many standard deviations away from zero, or the null, is this. 6 is very far. Usually you want to be within, well, you can see here, 95% confidence is within 2 standard deviations of the, in this case, the zero. Usually it's the mean. In this case, it's 0. So 6 is way out here, right? Now we're not even on the chart anymore. So when you actually go through and put that in a p-value calculator, you'll see, but you can see already, it is going to be significant. So any p-value that's less than 5%, in this case would be significant because we chose 95% as our confidence level. And I'm sorry, this one actually might be 0.25%. That's another one of the little gotchas, is depending on if it's one-tailed or two-tailed, it's either 5% or 2.5%. But in this case, it's very obvious in this case, we're at 0 essentially. It's definitely less than both of them. It doesn't matter. And that means that these are statistically different, even though they might seem like they're really close, right? 18.75 and 20%. But in this case, and again, in this case, it's because probably the sample size is so high. You have so many people going to these websites. You can say with 95% confidence, oh, these are different. And the conclusion would be use page A, because even though it's only, it seems like a little bit more than page B, it's statistically significantly more.
Fascinating. Let me know if you guys have any follow-up questions about this, or we'll get to the next one. And the next question here, Barb, is can you talk a little more about sorting in R? What is your method of choice?
Yeah, so a little backstory to this. When I worked with the statistician, I worked exclusively in R. When I went on my own with my own consulting firm, I switched to Python. And the main reason for this was I found it easier to deploy visualizations to the web with Python. And Python has a lot more support, a lot more community, bigger community, a lot more libraries. R used to be like very heavily academia. So not the case anymore. R is definitely catching up. And I had mentioned Shiny to Anne earlier. That's also for like putting visualizations on the web. So like they have they've caught up significantly, but I still tend to stick with Python. It has been a long time since I have used R for a client, because we always use Python. So I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'm happy to share my screen and I think we have a little bit of time if anybody wants to kind of try to go through it. I have RStudio up here and I have a fake data set from, I guess I was working on this a bit ago. Let me share one more time. And this is the Google Play data set. This is actually from Kaggle. It's one of the free data sets from Kaggle, and talks about the apps on the Google Play Store and what category the app is in, the rating of the app, the number of reviews the app gets, etc., etc. So let's say maybe we wanted to sort by the reviews column. To select a column in R, it's the name of the data frame. So Google Play is what I called my data frame, and then $. And then you can see it's already trying to give me a hint, the name of the column, and these are the columns. So I'm going to go down to reviews. And I think there's a whole bunch of different ways of doing it. I think there's some that are functions and then some that libraries, but there should be a base function that does it. I think order will do it. So if I say, I think it should just pass in order. I'm hoping that this will actually run it. And then if I just run these, let's see, cross our fingers. I think, no, that does not look like it ordered. I might be missing an argument to the order function, but order, oh, I'm sorry, that might have done it. I might have just printed multiple things here. I'm sorry, that did do it. Those are in order, and then it looks like it starts over here for some reason. I don't know what's going on down here. But the order function will do that. And for any of these things, if you Google it, there's so many different, you should be able to find sample code. I'm seeing another one here. There's a sort method. So you say sort, and then you pass in what you want to sort. So again, the reviews column, and then it would be decreasing equals, say, true to do it in decreasing order, and then hashtag is comments in R. So we're just going to move this down so we don't get confused. And if we run this, let's see, this one also seems to have done something. I don't think it's fully sorting. Something's going off here, and it could be the data. Like some of these reviews might, the review values might be problematic. So for example, some of them might be coded as text, and R is not picking it up. I didn't go through and clean this data set. I'm trying to do it on the fly here, but it'd probably be one of those functions. And if they didn't work, you had some special situation, usually what most programmers do is they'll Google the solution, trying until something works. Stack Overflow is fantastic for that as well. If you go on Stack Overflow, type in your question, someone almost definitely had the same question, and it'll come up right away. Whoever had this question, was it Kate? Was there something else you wanted to look through? I could try to help her.
she says thank you, so I would presume that would be it. Probably have time for one more data question with examples. Does anyone have anything else that they want to show or cover or ask? Can be anything. Or anything, Barb, that you think we should talk about today?
I was just about to try to go through and see. I know, like I said, a couple people said they couldn't make it, and trying to see if they sent me their questions, but I can't find them. Yeah, I can't find them. I think one of them was another HR. Yeah, it was a good tool to track HR metrics, and I had mentioned employee cycle to them as well. So I can't find any other questions that people sent me. So no, I think that's it on my end.
Cool. Well, obviously, we can sit here and chat for another 10 more minutes, or I can give everyone back a little bit of time. But I just want to, obviously say thank you to Barb. She is so great. She has so much information to share, and we're always happy to have her bring her technical knowledge into the Power to Fly Chat and Learn stage. So thank you so much, Barb. We really appreciate you and your time and all the great questions.
Well, thank you for having me.
Great. Well, everyone, have a great day. Tomorrow, we are going to be talking about creating healthy work environments. So if that's something that you're interested in, make sure to sign up. And then we're going to close out the week we have a profile review on Thursday. And then on Friday, we are closing out the week talking about utilizing AI I'm going to totally blank right here, about utilizing AI to solve business problems. So very cool chat. Definitely check that out. But thank you everyone for coming, and I hope to see you all at another chat again soon. Bye everyone.